Hi class, welcome to week 2 of History 1301. This week you guys have your readings that you'll need to complete. You'll have your quiz and your discussion. Additionally, I want you guys to keep working on your journal entries for Journal 1 that you'll need to submit in a couple of weeks, and you'll need to pick a topic for your essay. If you guys go into the essay prompt in Blackboard and you read the requirements for the essay and the guidelines, you'll find a link that has a series of questions that you guys can use to kind of help you figure out what your thesis statement and your topic will be. So go ahead and look at that this week. This week you guys will be reading about colonial history in British North America. So you guys are going to touch on topics like slavery, the growth of British colonies, new settlements in Virginia and Massachusetts, as well as violence due to British settlements like the Pequot War and Bacon's Rebellion. Most colonial history that you're going to read about would be like Jamestown in Virginia, which was the first colony, or the Pilgrims in Massachusetts. There's a lot of colonies up in New England, and then further south in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and in Southern Virginia, which is where Jamestown and Williamsburg is located. There are 3 types of colonies that you guys are going to read about. There's the provincial colonies, which are controlled very tightly by the crown. Proprietary colonies, which are similar to provincial colonies, but there's a governor that's appointed, so they have a little bit more freedom than the provincial colonies. And charter colonies, which instead of having appointed governors, they elect their own governors from property-owning white men that live in the colonies. Virginia was a provincial colony tightly controlled by the crown. And I'm talking about Virginia because today I am here in Oronoco Park in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And I am here on the banks of the Potomac River that you can see behind me. We'll go out there. It's very sunny, so I've got my hat and sunglasses on. So John Smith, when he came to America, mapped out the Potomac River in 1608. And he noted a lot of Native American settlements that were here along the banks of the Potomac in Alexandria. Native Americans were first noted in the area 13,000 years ago based on archaeological findings, and they remained in the area until 1675. And that's because in 1674, the Virginia governor created a fort just south of where I am today to defend the colony against the Susquehannock tribe and to push the Native Americans out. So in the 17th century, in the 1600s, behind me here, you see all of the land is kind of flat, but there were more bluffs, and it was really built up, and there were tobacco plantations all along the banks of the Potomac River. And again, that's here behind me. And the tobacco warehouse was built right behind at the top here, kind of where that building is back there. The tobacco warehouse that all the tobacco went through was built in 1732. Right back there. It's no longer here today, but this is the location of it. So in the mid-1750s, Alexandria was the staging area for British troops involved in the French and Indian War. And the French and Indian War, which you guys will read about, it was between 1754 and 1763, but it was more minor theater of the 7 Years' War, which was fought in Europe. And in the French and Indian War, Great Britain and its colonies fought the Kingdom of France and New France for land here. Now, Great Britain won the 7 Years' War, and all of the French's land was ceded east of the Mississippi, so Britain got all of that, and then Louisiana, of course, went to Spain, which you guys will read about. So I'm in Alexandria today instead of one of the more well-known colonies like Williamsburg and Jamestown, because this was a pretty important area, even though it's not quite talked about as much in terms of colonies. We're right outside of Washington, D.C. And in the colonial times, this area here was a port of entry for foreign ships by 1779. It was a major export center for things like hemp, flour, and tobacco. And by the late 1700s, this was one of the top 10 busiest ports in America for all the export of the crops and all of the goods. It was also the center of political, social, and commercial interests, and there were local residents like George Washington. Of course, he lived a little bit further south in Mount Vernon, which is probably about 10 to 15 miles away from here, but he had a home here in Alexandria. And George Mason also had a home here. They are two founding fathers of our Constitution. Mason is less talked about, of course, than George Washington, and he drafted or helped draft the Constitution. He played a major role in it, but he refused to sign it. He was very progressive for the time period, and he didn't sign the Constitution because he believed that it could make the federal government too powerful. He didn't sign it because it did not end the slave trade, and it did not contain a Bill of Rights. He felt like a Bill of Rights should be written down first, that we should have a Bill of Rights prefacing the Constitution. And then later on, his suggestions for the Bill of Rights helped influence that document. So here we are again. I'll show you one more time the Potomac River here. Now this area was chosen for the port and the tobacco facility, specifically because it comes a little bit inland from the Potomac, and you've got the land that comes out here on one side and then over here again, so it makes like a little bay where the water is a little bit calmer, so it was easier, and that's why this area was selected. But that's your video for this week, for week 2. I hope you guys enjoy reading about colonial America. Email me, message me if you have any questions. As always, I am here to help you guys, so let me know if you guys need anything. And again, start looking at topics for your essays, writing those journal entries, and best of luck. I'll see you guys next week.